I was wrong in doing what I did.
No, no! No! Are you listening?
Sean here, and I promised a proper video, so I'm going to deliver a proper video. The one thing about Lorne, whenever we talk about anything that he does, we have to remember he is an 87. So it's hard to determine what is stupidity, what's ignorance, just plain old moronic, and what actually is some kind of condition or syndrome or disorder. Lorne is so good with cognitive bias, also known as the false consensus effect. This is when you say, I'm not biased towards my own opinion. Everybody else is biased, but I'm not. I'm open-minded. See, I know what's really going on. I'm not biased because it's my opinion. I know it is fact. Then we assume, because we aren't biased, because it is fact, that everyone else is thinking the exact same thing because it's obviously right. Add all of that up, you start to think, everyone else is thinking and feeling the same way I do because obviously what I'm thinking is fact. A guy like Lorne with no world experience, no life experience, straight dumb, assuming that what he thinks is right and that everyone else is thinking and feeling the same way. That would also help explain a lot of why he is where he is. See what I'm doing. But it's very dangerous when you got a guy like him who has absolutely nothing to base his opinions on. Think about all of the non-relationships he's had. And now think of how many times he thinks he knows what the men around the catfish are thinking, what the women around the catfish are thinking, what the catfish are thinking, how they should be acting. You can just see this entire bum stew coming together of all of this stupidity and this self-righteousness and the know-it-all of Lorne Armstrong and why he thinks the way he does. One of the most awe-inspiring and coolest things about humanity is how I can take a group of people, let's just say Lornographers. Let's say I take a bunch of people that listen to Lorne, they're in the community, not the psychos on the message boards and on the internet. I'm talking about the YouTube community and the groups of streamers in that community. Let's take them all and we'll put them in a room and we'll play, let's say we play the Psycho Saga. We would all assume that we all thought the same things. We all had the same opinions, the same insight, but we would be shocked that despite our similar backgrounds, and even if we narrowed it down to age, and even if we narrowed it down to income, the opinions, the way they saw it, the way they heard it, would likely be vastly different. Our freaking eyes see colors differently. You remember the Laurel and Yanni? I heard Laurel. No matter what I did, manipulating the audio, I didn't hear Yanni. But some people did. People that live with you. My sister heard Yanni. I heard Laurel. We see things differently, we hear things differently, and we look at things differently. I think there's 7 billion people, 8 billion people on the planet? Every one of them, each individual is going to see things a little differently. You can make a pizza, pepperoni pizza, with the same ingredients, but it's going to be a little bit different. Even if you use the same recipe, it's not going to taste the same. You know this, and I know this. It's about the person who's making it. Just like opinions, just like insight, the way they see things, it's all going to be unique. 8 billion different perspectives, similar perspectives, maybe little twists and little different takes in there, but you get my meaning. Genetics, life experiences, physical health, mental health, diet, substance abuse, whether or not you even drink in moderation. All of that affects who you are, affects the way the body works and the brain works, and that can influence how you see things, how you're feeling when you see those things, how those things that you see make you feel. At no point should anyone on this planet think that someone else sees things just like they do. Now, if I could find a woman that had a similar perspective, similar beliefs, a based woman and not a wacko, just someone normal. If I could find someone normal and we were similar enough, then I could see myself having a life with them, have some time. I could see myself having a life with them. But if we're too off base, no way. I could even be with somebody who had a different political opinion, as long as they saw things in a similar light, the things that are important, how you treat other people, the way you talk to other people, basic things like that, health, just stuff like that. No one is going to be perfect. You're not going to find somebody that thinks precisely the way you do and has the same opinion and looks at things the same way, sees colors the same way. I mean, how many times have you asked your significant other, hey, does this go with this, or is this blue or dark blue? Is this dark blue or black? The number of arguments that start because of this cognitive bias. People get frustrated when other people don't. Why aren't you as smart as I am? They say a lot of smart people feel that way. Well, so do a lot of dumb people. I'm just putting it plainly. Why can't you see that? That's Lorne. He is the master of cognitive bias. We look through the world through different lenses, and almost all of my past arguments and my fights, confrontations, have been pretty much because I saw things differently. They tell you to stand up and fight for what you believe in. You think you're right. I heard a story, and I used professional wrestling a lot because I love listening to the old tales, because I liked it when I was a kid. Now I'm listening to these people tell these tales. Scott Hall did something in the ring. He accidentally hit somebody, and they came back in the next match, and they beat the living shit out of him with a chair. Knocked his tooth out. Kevin Nash Diesel was going to go in there and beat the crap out of him. And he's like, no, Kev, no. They thought they were right. He's passed away now. He was very based. And he understood human condition. He understood human nature. He understood that people usually do things coming from the point of where they believe what they're doing is right. We are in a world right now where everybody thinks they know what's going on. The vast majority of us, we understand the basics of what's wrong with the minority who are going off the rails. The minority who are going off the rails, they're right in many regards. They really are. I'm not talking about minorities and race. I'm talking about lunatics. They're right in a lot of ways. We just go about it differently. And there's a right way to go and a wrong way to go. But who's to say what's right and wrong? Who's to say, theoretically, what we believe will fix a problem? Who's to say which one is right until you do it? And that is why fights start, because you believe things should be done a certain way. And you won't know if it works until you put it into play. And there's rarely an apology afterwards if somebody is wrong. Because once again, human nature, human condition. Right now, German World War II villain names are being tossed around at Christians, at anyone who has a moderate political philosophy and beliefs. We live in a time where people are thinking to themselves, everyone has to agree with my viewpoint, otherwise they are inherently evil. The Lord of the Rings of Power is a terrible and boring show. But because the vast majority of people didn't like it, one of the producers actually came out and said people who don't like this are inherently evil. Imagine that. A streaming show, and you're inherently evil because you don't like what they wrote. Hey, what a way to win over an audience, right? We put up boundaries. We don't even know we're doing it. But this cognitive bias, the false consensus effect, unless you adopt a viewpoint, which I've really tried to do, that everyone thinks what they're doing is right. If you work in any technical environment or in an office environment, there's always that one person who carbon copies everybody under the sun. If they have a question, hey, did you get this done yet? It's not to you. It's usually carbon copied to your boss, to their boss, to everything. Now, thankfully, when I was a manager, if any of that crap came through, unless they were asking me directly, or I was aware there was an issue and I was also looking at it, I didn't even pay attention to it. And thankfully, where I work, they don't have time for that. But there are people out there like that. So I tell myself they're doing what they think is right. A lot of people are paranoid. They think if I don't let everybody know about this, then if I don't keep a copy of every one of my emails in detailed folders, it's going to come back and get me. Somebody's after me. You just have to tell yourself that's what they think is right. That's what they feel is the right thing to do. I'm not going to let it get to me. If you were to adopt that, you would feel much better about yourself. I do it as much as I can. God knows when I'm dealing with my ex, great mom, a wonderful woman, gaslighting, maddening, but I know she's doing what she thinks is right for the kids. So how can I possibly be angry or frustrated with her? Or think, why do you think that way? Why is that your viewpoint? Because I know how the kids should be raised. I know this. And I'm going to tell you straight up, I hesitate, but for Father's Day this year, I didn't see my daughter. Now, I don't get to see my daughter a whole lot. And I also understand that she probably thinks, I make a lot of effort, but I understand that she probably thinks that Dad's not making enough effort to see me. She chose to live over there, and we've talked about why. But I didn't see her on Father's Day. And I know that my ex made an excuse. She just didn't want to tell me, but I can tell when she's lying. This is kind of hard to share. I don't even know why I'm doing it, but I'm not going to stop. I've already gotten into the story. It hurt. It fucking hurt. For months. 6 months. I'd completely forgotten about it, and that feeling would come back, and I would say to myself, under no circumstances, even if my son said he hated his mother and wanted her to die, his ass would be there with bells on for Mother's Day. And one thing I'll give Sarah credit for, I don't know if this is true or if she really did, if all the girls from the volleyball team really did have something going on and they were doing this big thing. I don't know, and I've let it go. But what I'm saying is, she thought what she was doing was right, giving my daughter a choice. And my daughter and I have a wonderful relationship right now. And I do understand that kids, they go through phases, and I can't be mad at them for feeling the way that they do. Because I know in my head how I feel, how I see my daughter, this wonderful, beautiful young woman who's got a bright future ahead of her. But she may not feel that I feel that way. So who the fuck am I to get angry because she doesn't feel the way I want her to feel, or that I think she should feel, or that I think I would feel if I was in that situation? You can't change the way somebody feels. Once they see something a certain way, you're going to have to show them it's not really that way. And if you can't, you kind of just have to accept it. Remember we talked about Lorne and proof and things like that? We make up rules in our freaking head that nobody else has any idea what they are. We've got these rules that we live by and that other people should live by, but they don't know what they are, so how can you possibly live up to that? Lorne wants proof, but he never says, hey, this will suffice as proof. I know you're telling me the truth, but I want you to be honest with me. Here's the most common thing, and I think this is where Lorne gets it wrong too. I thought this way for a long time. In my head, I thought my friends should be the one. They should be the ones that initiate our outings and our meetups, or call me more than I call them. They should be reaching out to me, not realizing that, hey, I should also be reaching out to them. I don't really know what they're going through, because you can't know what they're going through unless you call them. People who are going through a rough time and they need their friends, a lot of times they won't call them because they would have to face their problem. That was difficult for me to understand, but now I understand that being a good friend means doing all of those things, the rules I had in my head, doing all of those things myself. Lorne has unwritten rules for when he should be called back, how many times he should be texted. I mean, if the guy would just write down a list and give it to them and say, here you go, then he could say, hey, the agreement was you agreed to 17 texts a day minimum. You agreed we would talk about this. You would let me know what the guys are saying to you when I'm not there, whatever else. Because it's not fair to have those rules in your head and then expect everybody to follow them. What about when new people come in your life? How the hell are they supposed to know anything about you or those rules you have? They don't. So maybe you tell them about the way that you are, the type of friends you value the most. Have a real conversation. I mean, don't do what Lorne does and say you need to go up to tell him you don't have any interest in him. Think of all the freaking arguments you're going to have with these new people because they can't live up to what you believe, the rules they should be living by, because they should be doing what you do, because everyone should see things the way that you see them. You believe that's how everybody else is thinking and feeling. When you're comparing ideas, a lot of times they're going to clash, and that's normal. Some people can't handle that because they expect everyone else to have the same idea. Go up to somebody and say, hey, what should we do tonight? Ready? On 3. 1, 2, 3. Dinner, movie, whatever. It's going to be different. Now, you may enjoy dinner. They may enjoy movie or vice versa. But what you're thinking at the time doesn't click. And sometimes when you're thinking about doing this and they're thinking about doing this, you do nothing because they didn't match. Cognitive bias can destroy families because of the generation gap. People that are above a certain age think a certain way, they have certain beliefs, and maybe they've stopped trying to adapt. I keep trying to adapt, but it's exhausting because you're seeing the same things repeat over and over again. But that generation gap, if you make a decision, your parents may not understand that decision because when they came up, that's not how they did things. That's not how they were told to do things. So generational gap can be a big problem, especially when you're set in your ways and you assume because you're the parent that the kids think the same way you did because you raised them and they were paying attention and they should believe in your values. That's not the way the world works. You have to use what's called a soft argument. Slow approach. Come at them, soothe it over. Come at them a little slower. You don't want to walk up and slap them in the face. The generational gap is a monster because of 20 years, what's happened in the world in 20 years that you grow up in and that they grew up in. It's a little bit much. There's a huge gap. So you kind of have to build that bridge, and you have to build it strong and slow so that it will last. Once you break the barrier, once you've been able to connect with them, you should be able to do it again because they'll see you coming and they'll say, hey, the last time we had a difference like this, look at how we resolved it. It's not going to be a fight because once you've had a big fight, they're expecting a big fight the next time around with your siblings, your friends, whoever. Christians and Muslims, you would think they would be at each other's throats. I told you, I'm a white agnostic. My best friend is a black Muslim. We get along great, but theoretically, we shouldn't. I don't have to come at him with a slow bridge. We have engaged conversations, and I'm excited to hear how he thinks, but not everybody is like that. I believe this. This is the way it is. The Bible is the only way to go. I don't mean to jump into religion, but I'm saying it's extreme case. The Quran is the only way to go. We're not going to budge. We're not going to budge. So let's butt heads. It doesn't have to be that way. You can choose what you want to talk about. Unless you have one parent who's Christian and one parent who's Muslim, and you're arguing about how you should raise them, whether you should let them choose, what religion should they, be put into, what should they accept. That can be a dangerous situation. Slow, soothing, bridge building. You want to have some fun? Tell somebody who's happily married or who says they're happily married with children that you don't want to get married or have children. For some reason, they get really angry about it. You are challenging their beliefs. This is why Lorne gets angry. When he says something, and come on, let's be real, 99% of us would be like, Lorne, shut up. You're a complete tool. What you're saying is wrong. I mean, what Lorne says is usually wrong. It's not just a different point of view. But you tell them about it, he will rage. He will get really, really mad because you're challenging his beliefs and his perspective. I think, honestly, if people disagree with you, it can be a positive thing. It can be a way for you not only to discuss and hash some things out, but to confirm what you believe or to adopt a new belief because it makes more sense. It's also practice. The more you discuss things with people, the better you are at handling real tough challenges in the future. You don't want to go out on the floor for an NBA game having played some pickup ball once a year. You want to be practicing as much as possible. I'm not saying go out and pick a fight with somebody. I mean, come on. But what I'm saying is if the challenge presents itself, don't back down. Some people, they have practice, but it's to tear you down. It's to pick you apart piece by piece. Lorne sees everybody is doing this, but in reality, they're just pointing out the obvious. I'm talking about the people who will take little bits here, little bits there, use your words against you, gaslight you. Those are the arguments and disagreements you walk away from. If they're not productive, see you later. One of the last things I want to say is there are different types of people, thinkers and feelers. People who are logical, and then you have your empaths. If people are feelers, you need to be aware that the tone of their voice, the emotion they have, it may not be directed at you. Remember how we talked about Lorne's memories coming up by how he feels? It could be the same with them. I never take it personal unless they're screaming at me and calling me an asshole, then yeah, I'm probably going to take it personal. Thinkers, they can sometimes be more difficult to deal with when you're discussing certain topics. They're not willing to open up. They're probably not going to reach down and pull out their feelings and use examples in their own life to try to help them understand. They're just going to go with the surface points and stay right there. The last, and this is the one that kills Lorne, is walking around thinking that people like you, assuming that people like you, assuming that women like you. We know that Lorne thinks because he likes his singing, everybody else likes his singing. But we're talking about something more dangerous. We're talking about a guy who walks around with the belief, the outlook, the perspective, that he has something to offer this world and to offer women, and that these women are the ones that should be grateful that he's even speaking to them. You can't discuss anything with him unless it's in a controlled environment, unless you slowly build that bridge, slowly. With Lorne, kind of hard to get away from Jamie. No, it's not. You dipshit. You just stop talking to her. It's not hard to quit smoking, which is why I have that picture up there. You just quit, because if you really want to do something, you can do it. It sucks. You're going to have to face a little adversity, but you can't do that, Lorne. So the cognitive bias, that's absolutely Mr. Lorne Lynn Armstrong. Stop pointing out his faults. That's probably what he's going to say if he ever finds my channel. Boy, this guy, he ain't got a life. He's pointing out my faults all the times. Oh, Lorne's a bad guy. Yes, he is a bad guy. And having a discussion with him would be a disaster because he's always right. Grew up in an 1,100-person town. Like I said, one of 66 people out of 1,100 who don't have a job. Way to go, Lorne. I love you guys. I will see you in the next one.
Hang on, I can't even catch my breath. Hang on.